bit earlier, um, the script that we're going to be heavily editing is going to be the player controller script, which we added the jump sound effect to, um, and we added what else did we add? Oh, didn't add anything else just yet, just that jump sound when you press space. So we have touched that script. But before actually I jump into them, what I want is for us to add some game objects into the scene that are going to talk to the scripts that we're going to make. So the first one, which is the most important one, is a UI game object. So if you go to game objects, you go to UI, you're going to pick image. Um, and when you do that, this white box should appear somewhere in your screen, maybe not in the lower left corner, maybe it's somewhere else around. But you should see like this white box here. And here, this UI system that I just made, it's gonna attach itself to the UI system that I already had made, which I called Health UI. Um, but what you're going to have is something that says Canvas, and then underneath Canvas, as a child, because it's gonna be a parent. This is the parent. When you have a game object that has this little arrow, it's called a parent game object. And when you hit the arrow, you will see the children that are associated with it, which is pretty much game objects that are attached to it. Um, but anywho, I called mine my UI game object Health UI, so you can go ahead and rename that. And then you're going to have this image game object attached to it. I'm going to delete it right now because I already had an image. Um, so I'm going to delete it, but don't delete yours. And what you're going to do is call your image hearts. Um, yes, and then when you're done, I will show you what you need to do right now once you rename it. So this is going to be these three hearts that are on the corner of the camera. Now, while hovering over the Health UI canvas that you just made, you're going to double click it so that you can see the UI. So as you can see, this is a really large rectangle, and it's outside of your camera view. So if you actually double click on the main camera, actually let's click on the player. The player is over here, and our camera is this white rectangle right here. Okay, now if you double click on that UI canvas, it zooms out and it's completely out of range in this huge area. Okay, so don't confuse the camera viewport with the canvas area. Okay, something that a lot of people in class got confused about. So what you want is now to put in those hearts in the images game object that you attach to the UI, which you're going to do right here in the inspector in the image component. You're going to be dragging an image to the source image area. However, if you don't have the hearts inside your assets folder, you're going to go to the classes Google Drive under the folder 2D module, and then week 3, you will find all of the items that you need to download and bring into Unity that we will be using for this tutorial. And the one that we are going to use right now is this hearts container sprite sheet. So once you bring that into Unity, and make sure that you know exactly what folder you're putting it in so it doesn't get lost. I think I put mine in a sprites folder. Maybe not that sprites folder. Oh no, I put it in the items. Did I? No, the HUD. Sorry. Sorry about that. So once you bring it in, you're not going to have this option of the little arrow. It's just going to be a plain image. And what we want is, let me just click on it and we'll make it into a multiple. So what you want is to select the image, and in the inspector, you are going to go to the sprite mode, and it's going to say single for yours, and you want to make sure that it says multiple. And then you're going to hit apply to apply the change so that you can use the sprite editor. And also make sure that all of your sprites are in Sprite 2D, not in anything else, because then the images don't work properly. All right, so I'm just gonna hit apply. All right, so let's hit Sprite Editor. And what you want is for all of these rows of hearts to be a separate image. And we can do that in Editor by splicing the image. So what you're going to do is kind of you're going to drag a box. Yeah, kind of like that, yeah. And you're going to just drag boxes. I don't know why mine's not allowing me to do that. Ah. Oh, because I left it in single. Alright, so you want to make sure that it's in multiple. Sorry. Let me apply. Alright. No, I did that. Okay. Anywho, so mine are actually already spliced by row, but what you want to do is to hover over and drag to make a box like this. And that's how you splice objects. I'm going to do Control Z for me because I don't want another box since I already have one. But what you want is to create 4 boxes outlining the 4 rows of hearts that we have. And you want to make the boxes as close as possible to the edges of the heart, because you want all of them to be relatively in the same position. And then when you are done splicing them, just hit apply and exit out. And that is going to allow you to see this arrow in your image. And once you click on it, you will see all the images that you created by cutting the image up, essentially. And once you do, what you want is to bring the 3 full hearts image to the UI system with the image component on it. So you're just going to click and drag this into source image. And then you should see that the heart image pop up in your canvas. Now, mine is located on the left corner like so because I moved it around, and I also anchored the image to be in the top left corner of the canvas. So the way to do that is to make sure that the hearts area is selected, make sure that it's the one that has the image on it, image component on it, and you're going to go into this rect transformed component, and you're going to double click on this box. Actually, it's just single click, not double click. And you're going to make sure that your anchor preset is on the left top. So this triangle right, sorry, this rectangle right here. And you're going to double click that. And then that is going to make these 4 little arrows pop up. And you just want to make sure that you move it around until you can see it well within your camera view. And just because in this small game window you may see it in line to what you want it to be, does not mean that it actually is in line. So what you want to do is to make sure that in game mode you have it maximize on play. You do that just by clicking on it, and it'll turn like this light gray. If it's not maximize play, it's turned into dark gray, and then if it is clicked, it's light gray. So when I hit maximize on play and hit the play button, the game is just going to be really big on the screen. You choose whatever position you want. All right. I just chose mine to be on the top left. But you don't have to do it exactly as I do. Cool. So just make sure if your hearts are located over here, or if it's over here and you want to move it elsewhere, the way to figure out the proper position would literally be to move it around with your move tool, and then hit play again and check the position. Go back if it's not what you wanted, keep moving it until it is where you want it to be. All right. Once you figure it out, the position that you want it to be, again, save, Control S at all times. once you figure out the position that you want it to be, now you can just leave it as is. Um, the next thing, let's see if we should jump on to scripts or just add all the game objects. Um, you know what? Let's add all the game objects that we need in order for the scripts to work all at once. So in that same health UI system, the canvas, right? What you're going to do is right click while it's highlighted and bring a UI element of text. And once you click on it, it should have something that says text underneath it as a child. I renamed my points text. You can rename yours the same, or you can just leave it as text. It doesn't matter. And what we are going to do here is to change the font, and you can change the color so that you will be able to see it from your background. So make sure it's not white. Because, for example, if it was white, you wouldn't be able to see it well because of the clouds here. That's why it shows like a periwinkle blue here. But this is going to be the text in the UI part is going to be this point system. That's what we're the game object that we're setting up right now. So I actually uploaded a font to the Google Drive. That's why I asked you to just download everything, and it's called 8-bit font. So when you unzip that font, just bring it in. I completely forgot where I stored it. Okay, here it is. So here's the font. So once you download it, unzip it, bring in the font file into Unity, and you're just going to drag the font file into this font tab right there. And that way we have access to it. You can choose the same font size as me. You don't have to. The only thing that you need to do is to make sure that horizontal flow is under overflow and not wrap, and your vertical flow is also on overflow and not truncate. And that's really all you need to know. And I also enabled, or rather turned on rich text so that the text outlining wouldn't be pixelated, but it would be sharper. So I would suggest that you do click on that. Do not write anything in this text tab. So once you have the default, it should say text on it. Delete everything in there so that it's all blank. Because what we're going to do is, through the script, we're going to manipulate what it says in here, we're just going to have it say points, colon, and then a space for the points. So make sure that this is all blank. Cool. And that'll be all the UI that we need. We just need the hearts and we need the points. So once you finish, close it all up. Make sure you save. The next thing that I added was some spikes. So these spikes I believe, are located in here somewhere in the 2D arts folder. I don't exactly remember where. Maybe it's in the tiles folder. Give me 1 moment. Are they there? Get past it. I don't remember where they are. But they are here somewhere. Oh, there they are. So they're in the items folder of the 2D art stuff. So click on the items folder, bring the spikes, and I just brought them over like this. And then I resized them to what I wanted to be. So once they are where you want them to be and the size and whatever, and you duplicate them to have more than one, etc., I made them into a group. So pretty much the way that you make groups to organize things so that you don't have a list of like 100 things in your hierarchy. It's simple. You right click, create an empty game object, and just call it what it's gonna be. So if it's going to be spikes, call it spikes. and then you literally are just gonna drag the game objects and put them uh, inside, and that's how you make a child from your parent. And that way they are all grouped, um, so that when you move them around, they all move in unison. Obviously, mine's not gonna move in unison because I only have one object there. So I'm gonna delete this one that I just made, and I'm going to move around the group that I had already made. That way I can just move all of them at the same time. Cool. The thing that I added to the spikes was a trigger. And I just added a box collider 2D component to it, and I sized it with the sizing and the offset. So the offset moves the position of the collider on both the X and the Y, and then the sizing just resizes on the X and Y position. So you just want to make sure that you size it correctly on the spikes. And that's all you need for that. I did the same thing with my enemies. So last week we had brought in the slime and the fly. We just added animations to them. So now you actually need to put a box collider 2D on your enemies. So I put one on my slime and one on my fly, as you can see with the green highlighting. And that's all you need for now. And make sure that all these box colliders that we add on the enemies and the obstacles, like the spikes, that they have this is trigger box checked. Or else the methods that we are going to use within the scripts will not react because they are dependent on this trigger button being on. Cool. The very last thing that I added in this scene that you do not have is a game master game object. So this game master game object is going to contain a script that just handles the point systems when we collect coins. Oh, actually, that's another thing that I added that you need to add. But we'll do that in a bit. So I created this game master object by right-clicking create empty object, and I just called it game master. And that's it for that one. It doesn't matter what position is in or whatever because it's just like an invisible object that contains the script. So don't worry about it being in the scene. So yeah, the coins. So I believe that I also put the, the coins art asset is actually in the items folder too. And you don't have to use a coin. It's right here, the gold coin. You don't have to use a coin. If you want to use a gem, you can. If you want to use keys, you can. The stars, whatever you want. The image doesn't matter. You can even collect cactuses for all I care. That actually would be kind of cool. So you can choose whatever image you want to collect. But I just chose the coins. And all you do again is just drag it into your scene and place them where you want. And I grouped them all together into this coins group. You don't have to do that, especially if you're gonna have things in over here and over there. Obviously, you won't want to group all of the coins together if they're all over the place. But if you want to say coins on platform 1, you can group those so it'll be easier to move around, etc. But anywho, I just brought in those coin art assets. I grouped them all together, and I added a box collider 2D component to each one. Each one of them has one. And I also enabled that is trigger button. Again, because that's the method that we are going to use in order to collide with them and collect them and talk to that point system in the game master script. Alright, so once you finish putting the colliders and is trigger on all the coins, you just close them up like so. And those are all the game objects that we need for what we're going to do. Let's control save. Okay, so what we are going to do now is start all of that scripting. Do not be afraid. It's really not as hard as it seems. A lot of it is just spelling things correctly, not missing brackets or parentheses or semicolons. It's very straightforward and very simple English type of programming. And that's why C Sharp is such a good language to start off, especially if you don't know any programming, because it's very easy to translate. It's very logical the way that it works. All right, so I'm going to go by line of things that I added to that player character 2D script. I'm not going to rewrite everything because it is a lot, so it would be inefficient. That's why I'm just going to be highlighting each line. So the first thing that you need above before the namespace are these two lines that are talking to the Unity system and the Unity engine. The first one, using Unity engine.scene management, will allow us to reload the scene when you hit 0 hearts. And then using system.collections allows us to use this IEnumerator method, which is called a coroutine. And coroutines allow you to add delay in seconds to two other methods so that changes and objects don't disappear abruptly, but instead there's a little bit of a time break. So we're going to be adding a delay when we hit 0 hearts and then transitioning to the reload of the scene because we don't want that change to be abrupt. All right. So here where all the variables are listed, we're going to be adding quite a few. And we're going to be adding all the things that are going to talk to the 3 scripts that we're going to be writing today: the health system, obstacle script, and the game master script. So first off, we have a private game master script called a GM. And this is essentially giving access to the player character 2D script. It's giving it access to the game master script, which is over here. That's why we're declaring it private. So when it talks to it, it doesn't. I don't know the best way to explain this, but essentially the difference between setting a public script and a private script in calling is so that just in case you have variables within this script that are shared, like the same as other variables in another script, that all those numbers and variables and objects do not get mixed up in your calling things that you shouldn't be calling. So we want private access to the game master because that's the only script that we want to talk to with those specific variables, even if those variables are the exact same name as one in the obstacle script, for example. All right. The next variable that we're going to be declaring is a public audio clip called coin collect. And essentially, this is just that coin audio file that we had brought in from Google Drive. Oops. And then the next one, I commented these 2 variables under stats because they are the 2 that are going to be manipulating the heart health system that we have. So the first one is a public integer called per health, which is the current health integer. Difference between an integer and a float, again, is that an integer is a whole number, 1, 2, 3, and then a float is a decimal, like 1.5, 2.6, etc. And another public integer we're going to call max health, and we're going to set it to 3. What does this mean? Well, it means that our maximum health is going to be 3. In this case, it's going to be 3 full hearts. And it's going to mean our full health. And then the last public object that I declared is an audio clip called damage sound effect. This is not a 5. It's a capital S. Just wanted to make sure because I saw that mistake in class. And again, this is just calling the damage sound effect file that you downloaded from Google Drive that you put into Unity. Okay, so that's it for the declaration of variables that are going to be talking to the 3 scripts that we are going to make and to the player character. Scrolling down, here in void start, we're going to add 2 lines one is going to be calling the GM. So in here, oh, I believe we forgot to to tag the game master script. We will do that in a second. We actually need to tag the coins and tag the game master. So we will do that really quickly. It's really simple. But anywho, where is the line with the game master? All right. So here we have given access to the script, to the game master script, and in this line, what we are saying is we're going to be calling the game master script GM within this script. That way, when we write things down, we don't have to write this entire thing because we set out how to find the game object that has the game master script on it to be called GM. So let's go and change the tag of the object just to make this simpler to understand. So if we go back to the editor and we find that game master game object that we created, up here in the inspector, you will see that it says tag game master. So yours probably says tag untagged, which is the default. So what you want is to just click on it, go all the way down to where it says add tag, and you're going to be clicking on this plus sign and then naming a new tag game master. So capital G game, capital M master, and then saving it. And then it won't attach the tag right away. So what you have to do is highlight the game master object again, go to the tag, and then find it at the bottom, game master. We're going to do the same thing to the coins. You can do it one by one if they are ungrouped, but if you have all your coins grouped like so, you can just highlight the group, go to tag, add tag, the plus sign, and then write in coin and save. And then highlight the coins group again, go to the tag, and hit coin. All right. And then if that didn't work and all the coins are separately saying untagged, just go into each one and just click the coin tag for all of them, just to make sure that they all have the coin tag. If the coins don't have the coin tag, then they're not going to do absolutely anything because in the script we are calling that tag specifically. Same thing with the game master. If you don't have the tag on, the script is not going to execute properly because we are looking at this very specific thing within the game object. So what does this line mean over here? Game object, find game object with tag game master. So please make sure that you type in object singular and not plural, because once you type in find game objects with an S, this line will actually mean something different because it will try to look for multiple game objects instead of just one. So be careful with that spelling mistake. So what is this line saying? Find a game object, which is find a game object here in your hierarchy in the scene, with a game object tag game master, which is exactly what we put in here. So that's what Unity is doing. It's going through your hierarchy, finding the game object called game master, finding the tag game master associated with it. And here it says get component game master. What does that mean? Well, get a component within that game master game object that has a tag game master and find the script called game master. That is what we are doing in this line. Cool. So remember that scripts are components. So get component game master is looking for the component that is a script called game master, or in this case, the component is game master. But I could call something else. Let me see. Actually, whoa. Okay, never mind. Just kidding. All right. The next line is called current health equals max health. What does that mean? We're always setting current health to equal max health at the start of the game. That's what void start's all about. Simple English, our current health is always going to be 3 hearts every time we start the game. That is what this line means. The next thing that we're going to do is add a void update. So you actually have to include the void update because it was not written within the script, so I had to add it. So all you need to do is void update, open and close parentheses, and then open curly bracket and close the curly bracket, and then make a space in between to fill all this stuff in. So in this void update method, we are having two conditional statements. One says if cur health is greater than max health, cur health equals max health. Plain English means if the current health is bigger than 3 hearts, then our current health is always going to be 3 hearts. The next conditional statement is if current health is less than or equal to 0, which means we have no hearts, then you're going to start a coroutine called delayed restart. And the enumerator, again, like I explained before, which is how it is a coroutine. The only way to start this method is by calling a start coroutine line within update or within start or within whatever method you have. But this is the only way to call it. You don't mention enumerator again when you call it. You just say start coroutine and then the name of the method of the enumerator method. All right. Let's continue down. So we're going to go past this private void fix update, past this public void move, and past this private void flip. And right underneath it, under the curly brackets of private void flip, we are going to make this new method called void on trigger enter 2D collider 2D call. Now last week we had actually used the on trigger enter 2D method to enter a trigger box to load level 2. But this time around, instead of using collider 2D other like we had last week, we're going to use collider 2D col because we're going to be checking for collisions between two objects, not just an object entering the trigger of another. So here we're saying in the conditional statement, if there is a collider on a tag called coin, we are going to execute all these things. And that's why it was important that we tag the coins because we're calling them very specifically. Destroy col game object is destroying the game object, deleting it essentially. That's why it disappears when you collide with it, like I did before. And then when you destroy it while colliding with it, we're going to play that little coin collection audio. So as it disappears, it will go ding because you found something. And then the last line here, we're calling GM, which is the Game Master script that has the logic behind the point system that we have. That's why it's nice to just call it GM and not having to write all that stuff like I said before. But GM.points is calling the script of Game Master that has a variable called points. And we are just adding 1 point every time we collide with a coin, giving us a collected point. Simple enough. All right, and make sure that you close, you should have two closed curly brackets here. One for the conditional and one for the actual on trigger method. So don't miss those are important. The second method that I wrote is right underneath the closed bracket of on trigger enter 2D. It's called void death. And it's a really simple line that we put in here. Scene manager.load scene. Test 1 is the name of my level 1 scene. So you're going to be changing this name inside to whatever your level 1 scene is called. Alright, so make sure that you make that change properly. All right. The next method that I added right underneath is that IEnumerator coroutine, delayed restart. And what we're doing inside here is yield return new, wait for seconds, 1. So we're just delaying the function by 1 sec, or the method by 1 second before we call death. And right here, death is loading the scene. So we're just delaying the load of the scene by 1 second. The next function that we're going to add to this player script is avoid damage. And it has to be a public void, not just a void alone, because we are going to be calling this method within the obstacle scripts, I believe. Yes. And we're calling it, we're not calling it in the health system, just in the obstacle script. And that's why it needs to be public, so that any script that I want can access this method within here. If I did not put public and just wrote void, then nothing else can access this method. Only the script that it is in. Okay. So the lines that we have in this void damage, so the first thing that we did was to set a variable within the method that we need to fill. As you can see here, usually in methods you leave them blank inside like so. But if there is any type of specific variable that you want to attach to that method, you can, just like I did here. And in here we put in an integer of damage, which is the negative number that we're going to get that's going to decrease our health. So what I'm saying here is calling audio and asking for that damage sound effect to play. That's the first thing that we want when we get damaged. And the next thing that we're going to do is get a component of animation, and we're going to play it, and it's called alien damage. Now, I completely forgot to actually add this animation component to the player character controller, so we're going to do that right now so we don't forget. And then the last line within that method is that current health is going to decrease by the damage number. And the damage number I'm setting actually in the obstacle script that we are going to write, and it's going to be 1. So it's going to be decreasing every time we collide with an object that has that is calling damage. It's going to decrease our health. In this case, it's just going to be by 1 point. All right. And the reason why we didn't say cur health is -1 inside here is because we want this damage method to vary between different enemies and different obstacles. So by leaving it as an integer variable and not as an actual set number, I can call this damage function in this obstacle script. I can call it in another script that, for example, if I want my pink slime to take away 2 hearts instead of 1, I can call the damage method and just change the number within the pink slime script. And then use this script just for obstacles that are going to take a 1 heart. That's the advantage over just using an integer variable instead of just using an actual integer itself. All right, almost done with this script. So the last thing that we're going to add here, let me make sure I get all the brackets. So here's 1, and then here's the second one right here. All right, so we're going to be adding all this information for another coroutine that is going to give us a little bit of force when we collide with something that gives us damage. So this IEnumerator is called knockback, and it's going to be taking 3 variables. A float for knock duration, which is going to be how long we're going to add the force for. Another float called knockback power, which is going to be the amount of force we're going to add. And a vector 3 of knockback dir, which is going to be direction. So remember that vector 3, I explained it like a line um, within the grid. And what you're saying is that imagine putting like an invisible line on the character, that it's going to take in these other two variables in order to move it slightly to the left when you collide with something that gives you damage. Um, so we're going to add a float called timer here, and we're going to set it to 0 because we want that knockback method to be dependent on the flow of time. So we're going to start at time equals 0, and then we're going to set a conditional of we're going to set a while statement saying that while the knockback duration is greater than 0, so as when the game starts essentially, we're going to add time to the timer by using time.delta time. So that's going to start that timer. And then we're going to ask this variable m_rigid body, which was actually a variable already set up within the script that we didn't do. It was just there already, which is right here, private rigid body m rigid body 2D. And what the rigid body does, let me go to the editor really quickly, to our player controller. All this information right here, rigid body 2D, what it does is that it adds physics to the player. That's why the player can jump. That's why it can fall through a platform if the platform doesn't have a box collider 2D. It just gives it gravity, and it allows it to be manipulated by force. That's what rigid body does. So we are calling the rigid body of the character down here in this coroutine that we are creating. So we're telling to add force to the rigid body of a new vector, again, a line in a coordinate of the plane, and we're going to add a knockback direction in the x position and multiply it by -100. What does that mean? We are multiplying it in a negative direction, meaning that we're going to push the character slightly to the left. And then we're going to set the other variable. We need 3 variables inside here because it's a vector 3. Vector 3s take variables of x, y, and z. And that's why here we have x and we have y. You have knockback direction dot y times knockback power. All right. And then the last coordinate will be our z, transform position dot z. And we're not changing the z, and we are not changing the y really. Here very slightly with the knockback power that we're going to use, but because what we want to affect the most is on the x-axis. And then we're going to close the curly bracket for this while statement, and then we're going to write in yield return 0. So it means while the condition is not running, while time is running and we have not been knocked back by anything, then everything's just going to be 0. Means that you're not going to be pushed to the left while you're just walking without colliding with something that will give you damage. Okay, and then make sure that your curly brackets are all in sync or else you're going to get errors. And the way that you do that is by clicking right next to the curly bracket and then scrolling up until you see a highlighted open curly bracket. In this case is right here, closing our entire script of player character. Click it over here in my last bracket. It's closing the namespace of standard assets, which is right here. So you always want to make sure that your parentheses and your curly brackets are always closed, because it will give you errors and you won't be able to play the game. Alright, so I'm going to hit Control Save on everything. So now what I'm going to do is add that animation clip to the player character that I forgot to do, that we are calling it. So I'm going to go back to the editor, highlight my player controller, scroll down, and then I'm just going to hit Add Component Animation. not animator, but animation. And once you do that, you will have this component pop up. And what we want is to change this animation clip, which for you is going to say none because you haven't put anything in there yet. So you're going to have this animations tab, little arrow that you can open, set the size to 1, and then we're going to add it again inside here. Okay, so how do we add that damage animation? Well, we're going to highlight our character controller. I double clicked it so that we can zoom in on it. I'm going to highlight it, go to the animation tab, and here where it says Alien Idol, if you click on that, you're going to see all the animation clips that are attached to our player character. And I already have a damage one right here. But what you're going to do is create a new clip. And then you're going to call it Alien Damage or just Damage. Make sure you know exactly where to put it. Always put it in your animations folder. And then you're going to click Save. Once you save it, you're going to have access to the animation sheet. And what you're going to do is go to the player folder and you're going to find whichever little character you have. You should have an image called Hurt. So that's the one that you're going to bring into the sheet. So find your little character and then bring in the Hurt in there. All right, you're going to do that 3 times because what we want is to make that little red change in the middle. So you're going to bring in Hurt 3 times here, like for example, oh, I'm still on idle, sorry. I need to go on damage. So you're going to bring in 3 Hurt sprites. 1 here, 1 here, 1 here. It doesn't matter how they are spaced as long as you have 3 of them. And once you bring in the 3, you're going to highlight the middle one by clicking on the animation timeline. So click right here. And you want to make sure you are in line with the little keyframe that you made by bringing in the image. So we're going to highlight, make sure that we're in line in the middle. And on the inspector in the sprite render, you're going to have an option of color. And you're just going to double click the color tab. You're going to find the red that you like and then exit. And then once you're done, when you hit play, you will see that change going, from white to red. You should see that change happening. This should not be red. It should be white. So make sure that your first image and your last image is white. And then your middle is red. So now when we hit play, the reason why mine's going really slow is because my sample speed is 15. But if you want to go really fast, just increase the number. Like so. I just want mine to be a subtle change. That's why I picked 15. You can pick whatever number you see. But yes, now we should have going from white sprite to red and back to white again and looping. Cool. So we're going to hit play and unhit record there. And the only important thing that we have left is to set that animation clip of damage that we created. So hopefully you put it in your animations folder. Make sure that it is in a legacy mode. So if it's not in legacy mode, this line that we added of get component animation play is not going to play. The reason why we need legacy is because it's an older version of animation.play. And now there's a new way of doing that. But because animation.play is just easy to use, that's why I have it in here. And we need legacy. So if we go back in editor, you find the clip that you named for damage. And you're going to go in the inspector and like this little icon here with like, it looks like a menu drop down. You're going to hover over it and you're going to hit debug. And you're just going to make sure that the legacy box is checked. And then you're going to go back and hit normal. And then that's it. And hit save. Cool. So that's all that we needed to do for the player script. And next we're going to make the health system, the obstacle scripts, and the game master script.